Let's talk vocal registers. There are a lot of different words and terms used for vocal registers, and actually they often just mean the same thing, they're just different approaches. The most common ones we hear are chest voice and head voice. These can be really useful for singers, but some singers find these terms confusing. As sound is made at the level of our vocal folds in our larynx, our sound isn't made in our chest or our head. But really these terms are used because that's where we feel the resonance and the vibrations. If you put your hand on your chest and sing a low, strong ah, it's likely you'll feel some vibrations under your hand. A higher note in your head voice, you might feel vibrations under your hand. It's a little hard to access, but we often feel it more up here, and that's why these terms evolved. So I'm going to break down what's actually happening when we're singing in these registers, connect some of the terminology together, and then give you some tips to be able to access these registers a little easily if maybe you're struggling to get into one of them. So I have a lot of students that will say, my normal voice, my speaking voice, my high voice, my singing voice. But just remember, we have one voice. We're just using it in different ways. So what are vocal registers? Really, they're just patterns of vibrations of the vocal folds. If you sing from the bottom of your range right up to the top, at some point you'll feel a gear shift where you need to flip into a different register. I'll make it quite obvious now. So we sometimes call that the break or the passaggio, and we can learn methods to blend this out so that you can seamlessly sing through, sometimes called a mix, but we're not going to go there today. So let's talk about vocal registers. Although we have these two main ones that we use for singing, there are actually four. So when I talk about these, I'm going to also talk about the body and the cover of the vocal folds. The body is the muscle fibers and the ligaments, and then the cover is the outer, more superficial level. I'm also going to talk about TA and CT muscles because sometimes you'll hear chest voice described as TA dominant and head voice described as CT dominant. So the TA muscle, the thyroarytenoid, these muscles just help to shorten the vocal folds. We then have the CT, cricothyroid, and these lengthen the vocal folds. So let's start at the beginning. There are four main registers. The first one is actually M0, M-O. You'll often hear this called vocal fry, creak, pulse, because you can hear them very slowly coming together, or also slack vocal folds. So when we're in this register, what's the mechanism doing? The body and the cover are just loosely vibrating here. And because it's so low, it kind of doesn't really even have a pitch. The TA muscles are switched on. Next up, chest voice, where we feel the resonance in our chest. And this is where most people tend to speak. You may have heard this as M1 or thick vocal folds or TA dominant. The CT muscles are also going to be working as well, but the TA muscles are more in play here. The body and the cover are both vibrating. Next up, head voice. M2. Also sometimes called thin folds. Just the cover of the vocal folds is vibrating. And again, although the TA muscles and the CT muscles might both be working, they're going to be CT dominant as the vocal folds are lengthening when we are singing in M2, thin folds, head voice, whatever you're going to call it. The last register is M3, maybe sometimes known as whistle register, and this is when just the cover is vibrating and the TA muscle is switched off completely. So you may have heard Mariah Carey do those very thin whistle, very high qualities. Sometimes the vocal folds don't even come together and create a rather airy sound. There's a little bit of controversy about falsetto, what this actually is. As this quick singing tips, I'm not even going to touch the surface of that, but I'll link you to a very interesting video by Gillian Keyes in the comments. So although there is a gear shift we get to in the middle of our voice, it really is a continuum. You can sing with a very thick sound in chest voice, M1, but also maybe a slightly thinner, more quiet sound when we're there. You can also have a head voice that's very quiet and clear, or you can make it quite full and bright. If you're belting, you're going to be taking M1, that's a TA dominant register higher. If you're maybe singing opera, you're going to be singing maybe just in M2 in head voice, and you can get a very loud, big sound. So if you want to access M1 chest voice, thick folds, really start to think about your speaking voice. Just say 1, 2, 3. Imagine you've got to get your sound right to the back of the room. You're making a speech without a microphone. You need people to hear you. You can also try strong consonants, ga, 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 or maybe a glottal onset, uh-oh, uh-oh. So take it to speech first, and then you can take it into singing exercises. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you are struggling to access this register, you're someone that sings maybe more exclusively in their head voice, try and do it without vibrato at first. Again, thinking a bit more spoken. If you're someone that loves to belt or sing lower and you struggle to access your head voice, think a bit more airy, although eventually, we do want a clear sound when we're up there. Think more sighing it out. Oh, oh. The hand gestures tend to help, I think. Or a bit more just throwing your sound out there from low to high. Whoa! Thinking quite bright as well is going to help. Sometimes a bit of a smile. Whoa! Oh! And actually using just a sound, a primal sound, just helps to get into these qualities. And then again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can take it into singing. So as I said, these are quick singing tips. That's a crash course into vocal registers, understanding how some of the jargon, the phrases actually relates to the voice. Everyone's voice is different. Everyone will have that gear shift in a different place, and it's also very different for someone's voice that's testosterone influenced to someone who is not. So it really is a vocal exploration. I hope you've enjoyed this today. If you have, don't forget to hit subscribe, because Quick Singing Tips is out every Saturday.